Welcome back to another upgrade on our Boat Stealthwake. This is actually Stealthwake number 2. This is the one that was brand new stock at the beginning of the summer, and now we've just about completed all of the upgrades. Our upgrades include the OSE 90 amp ESC. I've got a Leopard 3650 size motor, 2750 kV. This is actually a delta wind motor. So what I did was, when I programmed the ESC, I turned the timing down. Timing comes standard on the OSE and the Ternigi that we have in the other Stealthwake. Default at 15 degrees timing, which is, from what I've read, perfect for Y wind motors, but apparently the delta wind motors prefer a lower timing, so I set it for, I think it was 7.8 degrees timing. The stock servo, we put in the upgraded trim tabs that were on the other Stealthwake, and the rudder with water pickup that also was on the other Stealthwake. So same parts, just new for this boat. We redid all the plumbing, so we have plumbing coming in off the rudder that's going into the motor, and then the motor outlet is the front because the motor is in the front of the boat. The ESC water pickup is the one that came on the boat that has the through hull pickup. So it comes in, loops around, comes out, and then ejects out the rear water outlet. So as the boat is running, we can see if water isn't coming out of the front or the rear. We'll know where the water issue is, if it's coming from the motor or the ESC. So those are the upgrades so far. Next is to put in the Wohlt wire drive. The other thing I did, just like on the original Stealthwake, I fiberglassed the transom. There's 2 layers of fiberglass cloth on there. Now that I have a little more experience fiberglassing, it's a much nicer looking job than Stealthwake number 1. And then the receiver over there is in the balloon. That's what the orange is. So those are all the upgrades. Like I said, the next step is to put in the wire drive. So for the wire drive, I bought an 078 wire with a 3/16 prop shaft. You can see I've already got it marked for where the drive dog is going to go. So I need to grind a flat there for the drive dog. With the system, I bought the wire with the prop shaft, Teflon Liner, and already attached to the motor is the coupler. So it looks just like a flex cable connector, but this is actually, the collet is made for the 078 wire, which is a really tight fit. But according to Jeff Wohlt, who I've been in contact with, that's how it's supposed to fit. So in order to do the upgrade the way I've done it, and there's different ways to do it, and I'll show you how and why I did it the way I did, but I need 3 different telescoping sizes of brass tube. So first, you need your K&S number 8130, which is a 7/32 brass tube. You'll need 1/4 inch brass tube, which is the K&S number 8131. And lastly, you'll need K&S brass tube number 8132, which is the 9/32 tube. I've measured everything I need, and what I've got is my 7/32 brass tube is cut to a length of 7 inches. My 1/4 inch brass tube is cut to a length of 8 1/4 inches. And then my wire drive, I haven't cut the final length yet, but it's close. I'll have to take a little more off the end once I get everything fit up for the final cut. So with the stock stuffing tube and prop shaft removed, I can now fit in my new stuffing tube for the wire drive. Now, there's 2 ways to do this. Basically, you need your main stuffing tube to be basically the same length as what we took out. This way it'll work, hopefully, exactly the same way as it did before with the solid shaft. Now, I have cut my 1/4 inch diameter tube to the length of the stock stuffing tube, and I'll explain why in a minute. You could, by all means, take your 7/16 brass stuffing tube and cut that to the length of the stock stuffing tube, and then only use the 7/32 tube for the whole stuffing tube. You don't even need anything else, because The 3/16 prop shaft fits right inside the 7/32 tubing. If you have a Speedmaster strut or stinger, those floating bushings are made out of that same 7/32 diameter tubing. So therefore, if you want to make your life easy, just get 7/32 brass tubing, fit it inside your boat to the same length as your stock, and you're good to go. So the way I'm doing this upgrade is I have the floating bushing from the strut from the Stealthwake. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to use the floating bushing on the prop shaft end, and then this fits into my 1/4" brass tube, and essentially I'm doing exactly what the Speedmaster stinger or strut does as far as the floating bushing inside a 1/4" stuffing tube. Hopefully it gives me a little more reliability in the long run. Now, in order to make this work, I still need my Teflon liner to go inside the 7/32 tubing, and I've already cut that to length. So the Teflon is a little bit longer than the stuffing tube. Teflon liner in, and then basically my wire drive just fits right inside. The prop shaft stops pretty much right at that 7/32 brass tubing. You can see my marks from where the drive dog goes. I've got the 7/32 brass tubing with the Teflon liner. The wire drive is in, floating bushing. I'm going to push that whole thing into my 1/4" diameter tubing. So now I have my finished assembly. And then this whole thing goes into... Okay, so we're pushing in the new stuffing tube assembly. Now that 9/32 brass tube I had mentioned earlier, you don't need it, but it helps get everything nice and centered. That 9/32 brass tubing is right here. It's actually pushed into the hole that the stuffing tube originally was in. And what that does is it gives the stuffing tube a nice tight fit and gets it perfectly centered where the original stuffing tube was. So I'm just going to twist that into place a little. So now we have the 1/4" brass tube press fit into the little piece of 9/32 brass tubing. So now this is all locked in there nice and tight. Inside my 1/4" brass tubing is the 7/32. Inside of that is my Teflon liner. So as you can see here, you can just make out the 3 steps of the 3 pieces of brass tubing. The first step, that's the 9/32 tube that's crammed into this piece. That second step, that's the 1/4" brass tubing. That's the, call it the main stuffing tube. And then this, of course, is your 7/32 stuffing tube that has the Teflon liner inside. And then you can see the wire going into the motor coupler. So now we're at the stern. You can see, obviously this is not epoxied in yet, but the 1/4" brass tubing will be epoxied in place. Here is the brass floating bushing. Notice there's really no gap between the bushing and the drive dog. Unlike a flex shaft, it's not going to shrink and compress like a flex cable will. So you really don't need much, if any, gap. I'll probably leave a little bit more of a gap there before I tighten it all down. So there it is. All I have left to do, epoxy the brass tube in, and to keep the 7/32 brass tube in, I'm probably going to solder it into the 1/4", or I could use some Loctite, but I think I'm going to try soldering it in. So there it is. There's the upgraded Stealthwake.